Sir, keep your hands visible. I need to speak with you right now.
Officer, I didn't do anything, I swear.
Then you won't mind answering a few questions. Stay right where you are.
The message notification chimed at 2:47 inches the afternoon on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday. But this wasn't an ordinary message, and this definitely wasn't going to be an ordinary day. What started as a routine online investigation was about to become a confrontation that would change everything for one man who thought he was meeting a vulnerable teenager at a quiet neighborhood park. The person behind that afternoon message was someone called Marcus, a 42-year-old accountant from the suburbs who lived what appeared to be a completely normal life. He had a steady job, a modest apartment, and neighbors who would later describe him as quiet and unremarkable. But Marcus had been living a double life online, one that was about to collide with reality in the most dramatic way possible. For weeks, Marcus had been chatting with someone he believed was a 15-year-old girl named Sarah. He had found her profile on a social media platform and initiated contact with what seemed like innocent conversation. But those conversations quickly took a darker turn. Marcus began asking inappropriate questions, making suggestive comments, and eventually requesting photos that no adult should ever ask a minor to provide. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah didn't exist. The person on the other end of those messages was actually part of an undercover team that specialized in exposing online predators. This team, led by a former law enforcement officer named Detective Rivera, had been working for months to identify adults who were targeting minors online. They created realistic profiles of fictional teenagers, complete with believable backstories and carefully crafted social media presence. When predators like Marcus took the bait, the team would gather evidence while building toward an eventual confrontation. Their goal wasn't just to catch these individuals, but to create awareness about the very real dangers that children face in digital spaces every single day. The conversation logs between Marcus and the fictional Sarah painted a disturbing picture. Over the course of 3 weeks, Marcus had become increasingly bold in his requests. He asked about her school schedule, whether her parents would be home, and suggested they meet in person. The team documented every message, every photo request, and every attempt Marcus made to manipulate what he believed was a vulnerable teenager. The evidence was overwhelming, and the team knew they had enough to confront him publicly. Marcus had suggested they meet at Riverside Park, a quiet location with walking trails and picnic areas. He told Sarah to meet him near the old oak tree by the pond, a spot that was somewhat secluded but still within a public area. He said he would bring her a gift and that they could spend the afternoon together. The messages revealed that Marcus had much more sinister intentions than just a friendly meeting. He had been grooming this fictional teenager for weeks, building trust and trying to isolate her from potential support systems. What Marcus couldn't have imagined was the level of preparation that went into this confrontation. Detective Rivera's team had been planning for days. They positioned multiple camera operators around the park, set up recording equipment, and coordinated with local law enforcement who would be standing by. The team included a trained counselor who specialized in these situations, a legal expert who understood the boundaries of citizen investigations, and several volunteers who had personal experience with online predators. The day of the meeting arrived with perfect weather. Marcus showed up early, clearly nervous but determined to go through with his plan. He wore a blue polo shirt and khaki pants, trying to look casual and approachable. He carried a small gift bag and kept checking his phone, presumably looking for messages from Sarah. He positioned himself near the designated meeting spot and waited, completely unaware that he was already being filmed from multiple angles. Detective Rivera approached from the walking path, her team spread out strategically around the area. She carried a folder containing printed copies of every message Marcus had sent, every inappropriate request he had made, and every manipulation tactic he had used. The confrontation was about to begin, and Marcus was about to learn that his online actions had very real consequences. The moment Rivera identified herself and explained why she was there, Marcus's demeanor changed completely. The casual confidence he had displayed while messaging who he thought was a teenager vanished instantly. His face went pale, his hands began to shake, and he started looking around frantically as if searching for an escape route. But there was no escape from the evidence that Rivera began reading aloud for everyone in the park to hear. Marcus initially tried to deny everything, claiming there had been some kind of misunderstanding. But Rivera had prepared for this response. She pulled out her phone and began reading direct quotes from his messages, complete with timestamps and screenshots. The evidence was undeniable, and Marcus's attempts at denial became increasingly desperate and unconvincing. Other park visitors began to notice the commotion, and several stopped to listen as the confrontation unfolded. The psychological manipulation tactics that Marcus had used online became even more disturbing when read aloud in public. He had tried to convince the fictional Sarah that their age difference didn't matter, that she was mature for her age, and that their relationship should be kept secret from her parents and friends. These are classic grooming techniques that predators use to isolate their victims and normalize inappropriate relationships. Rivera explained each tactic as she read the messages, educating both Marcus and the growing crowd about how these manipulations work. Marcus then shifted to a different strategy, trying to claim that he had only been trying to help Sarah, that he was concerned about her well-being and wanted to be a mentor figure. But this explanation fell apart quickly when Rivera read the messages where Marcus had explicitly requested inappropriate photos and suggested physical activities that no mentor would ever propose to a minor. The gift bag he had brought contained items that further contradicted his claim of innocent intentions. The crowd that had gathered was becoming increasingly agitated as they heard the details of Marcus's conversations. Several parents with children at the park expressed outrage and disgust. One father approached Marcus directly, demanding to know if he had children of his own and whether he would want someone like himself approaching his daughter. Marcus couldn't provide coherent answers to these questions, his earlier composure completely shattered. Detective Rivera maintained professional control throughout the confrontation, even as emotions ran high among the bystanders. She explained that while what Marcus had done was morally reprehensible, the legal process would determine what criminal charges, if any, would be filed. She emphasized that the purpose of this confrontation was not vigilante justice, but rather education and awareness about the very real dangers that children face online every single day. The cameras captured every moment of Marcus's humiliation and exposure. His attempts to leave the park were met with more questions and more evidence of his inappropriate behavior. The team had prepared for multiple scenarios, including the possibility that Marcus might try to flee or become aggressive. But Marcus seemed too shocked and overwhelmed to do anything other than stand there as his carefully constructed double life crumbled around him in the most public way possible. What happened next would determine whether this confrontation would lead to real justice or whether Marcus would simply slink away to potentially target other children online. The evidence was overwhelming, the documentation was thorough, and the community was now aware of exactly what kind of person had been living among them. As the confrontation intensified, Marcus made a decision that would seal his fate permanently. He pulled out his own phone and started frantically deleting messages, not realizing that the team had already preserved everything through screenshots and digital forensics. Detective Rivera calmly informed him that destroying evidence was a federal crime and that his actions were being recorded from multiple angles. The panic in Marcus's eyes became even more pronounced as he understood the gravity of his situation. Several bystanders had begun recording the incident on their own phones, turning what Marcus had hoped would be a private meeting into a very public reckoning. A jogger who had stopped to watch pulled out her device and started live streaming the confrontation to social media. Within minutes, the video was being shared across multiple platforms as viewers recognized the importance of exposing predatory behavior. Marcus noticed the additional cameras and became increasingly agitated, demanding that people stop recording him. Detective Rivera explained that he was in a public space and had no reasonable expectation of privacy, especially given the nature of what he had attempted to do. She continued reading from the message logs, revealing how Marcus had tried to convince the fictional teenager to lie to her parents about where she was going. He had suggested elaborate cover stories and even offered to pick her up from school so her family wouldn't know about their meeting. These details painted a picture of someone who understood exactly how wrong his intentions were. The gift bag that Marcus had brought contained items that made his true intentions crystal clear. Detective Rivera opened it carefully, revealing a smartphone that he had planned to give to the fictional Sarah so they could communicate without her parents knowing. There was also jewelry, makeup that was far too mature for a teenager, and a hotel room key card. Each item served as evidence of premeditation and grooming behavior that prosecutors would later use to build their case. Marcus attempted one final desperate explanation, claiming that he was actually working on some kind of research project about online safety. He said he had been trying to understand how predators operate so he could protect children in his community. Rivera immediately dismantled this lie by pointing out that legitimate researchers don't request inappropriate photos or plan secret meetings with minors. She noted that his messages contained no educational content whatsoever, only manipulation and sexual predation. The crowd's reaction grew more intense as additional disturbing details emerged from the message logs. Marcus had researched the fictional Sarah's supposed school district and had driven by locations where he thought she might be found. He had asked detailed questions about her daily routine, her friends, and her family's work schedules. This level of stalking behavior demonstrated that his intentions went far beyond casual conversation and into the realm of serious criminal conduct. Local law enforcement officers who had been standing by finally approached the scene. Detective Rivera had coordinated with them beforehand, ensuring that everything was handled properly from a legal standpoint. The officers took custody of Marcus's phone as evidence and began the process of formally detaining him while the investigation continued. Marcus's attempts to explain himself to the police were just as unconvincing as his earlier denials to Rivera and the crowd. One of the most chilling moments came when Rivera revealed that Marcus had been simultaneously chatting with multiple profiles that he believed were underage girls. The team had discovered his conversations with at least 4 other fictional minors, each following the same disturbing pattern of grooming and manipulation. This wasn't an isolated incident or a moment of poor judgment, but rather evidence of systematic predatory behavior that had likely been going on for months or even years. The psychological profile that emerged from Marcus's messages was that of someone who specifically targeted children he perceived as vulnerable or isolated. He had asked detailed questions about the fictional Sarah's relationship with her parents, whether she had many friends, and how she felt about herself. These questions were designed to identify emotional weaknesses that he could exploit to gain trust and control. Rivera explained to the crowd how predators use these tactics to identify the most susceptible victims. Marcus's workplace was contacted as part of the investigation, and within hours his employer had released a statement confirming his termination. The accounting firm where he had worked for 8 years expressed shock and disgust at the allegations, noting that he had never shown any concerning behavior in his professional environment. This revelation highlighted how predators often maintain completely normal public personas while engaging in criminal behavior in private. The investigation expanded beyond just Marcus's online activities. Police obtained warrants to search his apartment and electronic devices, looking for evidence of additional victims or criminal behavior. They discovered an elaborate system he had created to manage multiple fake identities and conversations with people he believed were minors. His computer contained thousands of saved conversations and photos, suggesting that his predatory behavior was far more extensive than initially realized. Social media platforms where Marcus had been active began their own internal investigations, working with law enforcement to identify other potential victims. The companies implemented additional safety measures and reporting mechanisms based on the techniques that Marcus had used to avoid detection. His case became a teaching example for platform moderators and safety teams about the sophisticated methods that predators use to groom children online. The viral nature of the confrontation video sparked broader conversations about online safety and the responsibility of platforms, parents, and communities to protect children. Educational organizations reached out to Detective Rivera's team, requesting presentations and training materials that could help parents understand the warning signs of online predation. The case demonstrated how quickly predators could escalate from initial contact to attempting real-world meetings with their intended victims. Marcus's family members were contacted by media outlets seeking comment on the allegations. His elderly parents expressed complete shock, stating that they had never suspected anything inappropriate in their son's behavior. A sister who lived across the country said she hadn't spoken to Marcus in months and was horrified to learn what he had been accused of doing. The family requested privacy while they processed the devastating news about their relative's criminal behavior. The legal proceedings that followed would test the boundaries of citizen journalism and online investigations. Marcus's defense attorney argued that the confrontation had been orchestrated for entertainment purposes rather than legitimate law enforcement. But prosecutors maintained that the evidence of his intent to commit crimes was overwhelming, regardless of how it was obtained. The case would set important precedents for how similar investigations would be handled in the future. But this was just the beginning of Marcus's downfall, and what happened next would prove that the consequences of his actions extended far beyond a single embarrassing confrontation in a public park. A public park. The investigation into Marcus's digital footprint revealed a web of deception that law enforcement had rarely encountered in cases of this magnitude. Computer forensics specialists discovered that he had been operating under 17 different fake identities across multiple platforms, each carefully crafted with unique backstories and profile pictures stolen from legitimate social media accounts. The level of organization was disturbing. Marcus kept detailed spreadsheets tracking his conversations with different fictional minors, noting their supposed ages, interests, and emotional vulnerabilities that he could exploit. What made this case particularly alarming was the discovery of a private online forum where Marcus had been sharing tactics with other predators. Screenshots recovered from his deleted files showed conversations where he discussed the most effective ways to build trust with children, how to identify targets who were less likely to report inappropriate contact, and methods for avoiding detection by parents and platform moderators. This wasn't just an individual acting alone, but part of a larger network of people who were actively coaching each other on how to harm children. The forensic team found evidence that Marcus had successfully met at least 3 real victims over the past 2 years. These weren't the fictional profiles created by Detective Rivera's team, but actual children who had fallen prey to his manipulation tactics. The discovery of these real victims transformed the case from attempted crimes to actual exploitation charges that carried much more severe penalties. Each victim was contacted through proper channels, and specialized counselors were brought in to help them process what had happened and begin the healing process. Detective Rivera's team received both praise and criticism for their methods. Law enforcement officials acknowledged that their work had prevented Marcus from potentially harming more children, but some legal experts questioned whether citizen investigations could compromise official prosecutions. The debate sparked discussions in legislative committees about how to regulate these types of operations while still protecting children from online predators. The team defended their approach, arguing that traditional law enforcement resources were insufficient to address the massive scale of online predation. Marcus's arrest made headlines across the region, and the story quickly gained national attention when the confrontation video went viral on social media platforms. The footage was viewed over 15 million times in the first week, with thousands of comments from parents expressing gratitude that someone was taking action against online predators. Child safety advocates used the case as an example of why stronger protections were needed for minors using social media and messaging platforms. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed disturbing insights into Marcus's mindset and behavior patterns. The court-appointed psychiatrist found that Marcus exhibited classic signs of someone who had been escalating his predatory behavior over several years. What had started with inappropriate conversations had progressed to requesting explicit photos and eventually to planning physical meetings with his intended victims. The evaluation suggested that without intervention, Marcus would have continued escalating until he committed increasingly serious crimes. His former colleagues at the accounting firm were interviewed by investigators, and several admitted they had noticed concerning behavior that they had dismissed at the time. Marcus had frequently made inappropriate comments about young female interns and had volunteered to work on accounts for youth organizations and schools. One coworker recalled feeling uncomfortable when Marcus had offered to tutor his teenage daughter in mathematics, though he hadn't reported the incident because he couldn't articulate why it felt wrong. The ripple effects of Marcus's exposure extended throughout his community. Parents at local schools organized safety seminars to educate children about online predators and the tactics they use. The Parent-Teacher Association invited Detective Rivera to speak at a packed auditorium where she explained how predators identify and target vulnerable children. The presentation included examples from Marcus's own messages, demonstrating how quickly innocent conversations could turn manipulative and dangerous. Social media companies faced renewed pressure to implement stronger safety measures following the widespread coverage of Marcus's case. Platform executives were called to testify before congressional committees about what they were doing to prevent predators from using their services to target children. Several companies announced new artificial intelligence systems designed to identify grooming behavior in private messages, though critics argued these measures were long overdue and insufficient. The hotel where Marcus had reserved a room using the key card found in his gift bag cooperated fully with the investigation. Security footage showed him checking in the day before the planned meeting, and staff members recalled his nervous behavior and specific requests for a room on the ground floor with easy parking access. The hotel manager expressed horror at learning how their facility was going to be used and implemented new policies requiring additional identification for guests who appeared to be meeting with minors. Marcus's defense team attempted to argue that their client was suffering from a psychological disorder that impaired his judgment and ability to understand the consequences of his actions. However, the evidence of his careful planning, use of multiple identities, and sophisticated efforts to avoid detection contradicted claims that he didn't understand right from wrong. The prosecution presented expert testimony explaining how predators often appear to function normally in society while engaging in calculated criminal behavior in private. The three real victims whose cases were connected to Marcus through the digital forensics investigation each dealt with the aftermath differently. One family chose to speak publicly about their experience, hoping to help other parents recognize warning signs of online grooming. The teenager, now 18, described feeling ashamed and confused about what had happened, but said she was grateful that Marcus had been stopped before he could harm other children. Her parents admitted they had been unaware of the extent of her online interactions and had since implemented much stricter monitoring of their younger children's internet use. Another victim's family decided to pursue civil litigation against Marcus, seeking damages for the psychological harm their child had suffered. Their lawsuit also named the social media platform where the initial contact had occurred, arguing that the company had failed to implement adequate safety measures to protect minors. The case raised important questions about corporate responsibility and whether technology companies could be held liable for facilitating predatory behavior on their platforms. The third victim's family chose to remain completely private, working only with law enforcement and counselors to address the trauma their child had experienced. Detective Rivera respected their decision while noting that the varying responses highlighted how differently families cope with discovering their children have been targeted by predators. She emphasized that there was no right or wrong way to handle such a devastating situation and that support should be available regardless of how families chose to move forward. Marcus's sentencing hearing was scheduled for several months after his arrest, giving prosecutors time to build comprehensive cases for all the charges he was facing. The evidence collected by Detective Rivera's team proved crucial in establishing the timeline and intent behind his criminal behavior. Legal experts predicted that Marcus would face significant prison time, especially given the multiple victims and the sophisticated nature of his predatory activities. The case also prompted changes in how law enforcement agencies approached online predator investigations. Several departments reached out to Detective Rivera's team to learn about their methods and explore potential partnerships. While the legal system grappled with questions about citizen investigations, there was widespread agreement that more resources needed to be dedicated to protecting children from online predators. Educational institutions began incorporating lessons about online safety into their curricula at younger grade levels. The Marcus case became a teaching tool for showing students how predators use manipulation tactics and why it's important to report uncomfortable online interactions to trusted adults. Schools also updated their policies about student internet use and began providing more training for teachers and staff about recognizing signs that a child might be experiencing online exploitation. The viral nature of the confrontation video led to copycat investigations across the country. Some were conducted professionally with proper law enforcement coordination, while others were attempted by untrained individuals who potentially compromised criminal cases or put themselves in danger. Detective Rivera began offering training seminars for people interested in conducting similar operations, emphasizing the importance of proper preparation, legal knowledge, and safety protocols. Marcus's case file continued growing as investigators uncovered additional evidence of his predatory behavior. Phone records revealed extensive communications with numbers linked to other suspected predators, suggesting that the network of individuals sharing tactics was larger than initially realized. This discovery led to a broader investigation that would eventually result in arrests across multiple states. The psychological impact on Detective Rivera's team was something they hadn't fully anticipated when they began their investigation. Several team members required counseling after spending weeks immersed in Marcus's disturbing communications and discovering the extent of his crimes against real children. The experience highlighted the emotional toll that this type of work takes on the people dedicated to protecting children from online predators. But the most significant development was yet to come, as prosecutors prepared to reveal evidence that would show Marcus's crimes were far more extensive and organized than anyone had initially suspected. The courtroom was packed on the morning of Marcus's preliminary hearing, with victims' families, community members, and media representatives filling every available seat. What they were about to hear would shock even the most seasoned legal professionals who had dealt with predator cases for decades. The prosecutor, District Attorney Sarah Chen, stood before the judge with a thick folder containing evidence that painted a picture of criminal behavior so systematic and widespread that it defied comprehension. Chen began by explaining that the investigation had uncovered what could only be described as a predator network operating across state lines. Marcus hadn't just been targeting individual children randomly, but had been part of an organized group that shared information, techniques, and even specific targets. The network used encrypted messaging apps and private forums to coordinate their activities, treating the exploitation of children like a business operation with defined roles and responsibilities. The evidence revealed that Marcus had been assigned specific geographic regions where he would identify and groom potential victims. Other members of the network handled different aspects of the operation, from creating fake profiles to laundering money obtained through exploitation schemes. Some members specialized in technical aspects like avoiding detection by platform algorithms, while others focused on psychological manipulation techniques that proved most effective with different age groups. Cell phone records showed that Marcus had been in contact with network members just hours before his planned meeting at Riverside Park. Text messages indicated that he had been receiving coaching on how to handle the encounter and what to do if the victim seemed hesitant or scared. The level of premeditation and coordination shocked investigators, who had initially viewed this as an isolated case of online predation. The network's activities extended far beyond simple grooming conversations. Financial records revealed a sophisticated operation involving the production and distribution of illegal content, with Marcus serving as both a recruiter of victims and a customer for materials produced by other network members. Bank statements showed regular payments to offshore accounts and cryptocurrency transactions designed to hide the money trail from law enforcement agencies. Detective Rivera testified about the challenges of investigating organized predator networks compared to individual cases. She explained how these groups adapted their tactics based on law enforcement responses, constantly evolving their methods to stay ahead of detection efforts. The network shared intelligence about which platforms were most heavily monitored, how to identify undercover operations, and ways to quickly disappear online when investigations got too close. The psychological profiles of network members revealed common characteristics that made them particularly dangerous to children. Unlike opportunistic predators who might target victims randomly, network members were trained to identify specific vulnerabilities in children that made them ideal targets. They looked for signs of family dysfunction, social isolation, low self-esteem, and other factors that would make children less likely to report inappropriate contact or be believed if they did speak up. Marcus was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to multiple charges of child exploitation and conspiracy. The network he belonged to was dismantled, leading to over 30 arrests across 12 states. Detective Rivera's investigation sparked nationwide reforms in online child safety protocols and inspired countless parents to have crucial conversations with their children about digital dangers. This case proved that when communities refuse to look the other way, predators can be stopped before they destroy more innocent lives. This case was intense, but this case on the right-hand side is even more insane.